Good evening, good afternoon, good morning to all those who've joined across the globe. We'll be starting in the next 2 minutes. Okay, so Metaverse and crypto are presenting a whole new realm of digital innovation and technology that are transforming human engagement and interactions and set to shift the boundaries of connection and commercialization. At the same time, it's also becoming a minefield of a brand new world of security risks, vulnerabilities, and valid user concerns across the globe. As much as these innovations could break the boundaries of human interaction, there are also new opportunities for fraud, cybercrime, and scams. I'm not sure where the metaverse, Web3, and NFTs is taking us, or if blockchain is the most optimal solution to support these technologies, or what the future of this new digital world means for individuals, businesses, and government. But what I do know is that this is going to need better approaches towards digital and cyber risk management. I welcome you all to the Institute of Risk Management's India Group webinar. And without getting into any technical concepts of today's masterclass, let me welcome Ms. Geeti Panikkar and Mr. Rajesh Dudu, two thought leaders who have put together two amazing masterclasses on the two highly used buzzwords in a digital world, that is blockchain and metaverse. We're continuously working towards developing a strong IRM ecosystem in India. And as the chairman of the IRM India Regional Group, I look forward to seeing you take up our qualifications towards becoming a certified risk professional. So I now invite Ms. Geeti to start her masterclass on blockchain risk management.
Thank you, Harsh, and welcome to all the participants to this session, which will be followed by a session on metaverse opportunity. All of you must be wondering why a blockchain risk management session now, because the term blockchain you have been hearing for many years now, and the use cases are increasing day by day. Why would what is the real need for having a blockchain session, blockchain risk session now? And so I will first in this session start with why this at this juncture, and secondly I will also take you to the key participants in the ecosystem of a particular use case, and then we will delve a little bit deeper into blockchain risk and risk mitigation, and finally we will also touch upon some of the metaverse risk. Because Rajesh will be taking metaverse opportunity, I hope you will be able to correlate what I'm saying in that session more. But before we go into all these things, I want to really appreciate your quest for knowledge in this evening, where you are joining from different parts of the world, despite all the pains of war, all the pains of pandemic, lockdown, illness, sickness, a lot of people unwell in the family and friend circle. So really, from my bottom of my heart, I want to appreciate your enthusiasm, and I hope we can carry forward that enthusiasm throughout. This won't be a blockchain session, so my focus will be on the risk management side. But I'm not expecting all of you to be a blockchain expert. Even I would call myself as a student. I've been learning continuously for a few years, and it is such a vast subject that you can never finish learning. And most of the emerging digital technologies are like that. The facets are changing, the colors are changing every day, that you have to continuously upskill because the versions are coming new. And similar to blockchain also, if you really look at the history of blockchain right from the very beginning of first white paper or even before that, and now the capability of blockchain networks have really transformed, and it is actually in the version 3 phase where you have Now a lot of more application interoperability between different blockchains, things like NFTs, etc., have come, and now we are in metaverse also, where blockchain is one of the foundational technologies used in meta. So the evolution has been very fast, and evolution has been simply amazing, awesome for most of the industries. And PwC says that by 2025, most of the industries are going to use blockchain, and by 2025 again, this blockchain as a technology is expected to give back 1 trillion, 1.76 trillion to the economy, the global economy. So that's the power of this technology, and we are in almost in the version 3 phase. So, and that's the context in which we are doing this session. So far there were applications, limited application, but if you take last 2 3 years, the use cases have substantially increased. It's going to be touching our life, even if we don't want, or we inadvertently, it's going to touch our life in almost all industries, and sometimes we may not be even aware, but it is touching our life. And don't you want then blockchains to be much more secure? Don't you want the players who are using these blockchain for their services to be mindful of the risk and the risk governance? We all want, right? And that's the context in which we are doing this blockchain risk management, because I know as students and practitioners of be it in financial institutions, you are likely to go back and work on a blockchain based service, or you are going to develop a new service, or you're going to risk evaluate the service in the coming months or coming years. And hence I want you to be enablers of smart risk taking, not as gatekeepers. That's my CEO always says, risk managers should be smart enablers and not gatekeepers. Yes, we tend to be gatekeepers when some risks are beyond our risk appetite, but generally our attitude and skills need to be that how can we enable the front line to, or our customers to get the best of services, but the least of disruption and least of risk. And if we are creative, if we are aware of the risk, rather than being scared of the risk or because of lack of awareness, we can be that enabler. And my objective for agreeing or planning this session with Harsh was to create an array of risk managers and business experts who understand as much as possible. As today, you can consider this as a foundational session. Go back, read more, study more, and protect your organizations while you develop solutions for the customers, so that in the long run your solutions are sustainable, scalable, and resilient. So that's the session objective, I would say. For those who are new to the technology, just a quick overview. What is blockchain? All of you know it's a distributed ledger compared to the central ledger or a centralized ledger mechanism of recording transactions in your organization, where you have one database and everything is set up and then transaction occurs. So it is more of a distributed ledger where each of the computer nodes participating in that network validate the transactions coming in that network, so that each of the node or the computers maintain a unique copy which is immutable. It cannot be changed by without once it is recorded. And there is also a consensus mechanism between these parties in that chain blockchain, or it is called the consensus protocol, whereby, and there are different types of consensus protocol, like every organization will have some rules and regulation for its functioning. Similarly, each chain has its own protocol, wherein using that protocol this transaction is validated, and if it is validated, it is added as a block. You can see, and added as a block to the network and stored. It is the biggest advantage of blockchain versus traditional databases. It is immutable. Once recorded, you cannot change. It is transparent to all the parties, all the users in that particular chain, and it is decentralized. So there's a lot of trust because one party cannot tamper. It is almost tamper proof in the network. Now, some of these benefits are also its weaknesses too. We will see how it can become a weakness in the subsequent stage, but this is an overall picture of a blockchain: how transactions are initiated, recorded after consensus, broadcasted, and then validated, and finally completed. There are different types of blockchain also. There are some are very open public blockchain, and there are private blockchain where only a few set of users like a few set of banks or shipping companies, they just form a small private network to transact among themselves. And there are hybrid, wherein you have some part of the network public and some part private, where public can be open to users, private can be used by or for agreeing between the parties. So there are different types of blockchains today, and different types of consensus also are developing and changing day by day. I don't want to go into the too much technicality. Of course, you can read it later. But let me come back to the practical use case of blockchain, where our blockchain is being used, because it is very much immutable and unique. The biggest use case is wherever you want a proof of ownership, for example, your degree certificate or your property certificate or property ownership or your legal ownership, any sort of record keeping where you need uniqueness for that particular document, then that's one best use case of blockchain. Similarly, your health records or your collateral management records, some of the things like very precious things like diamond or artwork, etc., can be stored like a blockchain token today, as an example. So uh, this has a great application in payments, unique payment. Now many of the geographies are looking at cross-border payments using central bank digital currencies. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are being used in many industries, be it media, where music rights, audio rights, or video rights, or even games, artwork, digital pictures, digital text. A lot of such things are being digitalized and used because of the ability to track the right ownership as well as uniqueness of that record and the precious value attached to it. So these are some of the areas where blockchain are being used. In banking, there are a lot of areas like custody of digital assets, clearing, where process there are a lot of reconciliation processes are required. Multiple third parties, intermediaries are involved. That is where you need to you can start thinking about blockchain. But personally, and I would say all the people who have dealt with blockchain would know that blockchain may not be the ideal and the best solution in all these circumstances. There may be other distributed ledger, other ledger technologies, where database technologies, which you should explore. And then eventually, if you feel that blockchain is aligned with my strategic vision, my strategic plan, from a cost perspective, technology perspective, regulation perspective, and my customers perspective, then you go ahead and do a blockchain setup. And you can do it on your own as a self-operated model, or you can actually approach third parties who will offer you a blockchain as a service. They will give you all the service and management associated with. All you have to pay for the user and service and be part of the network. So different ways for implementation, but these are the use cases, and these are the um, what do you call methods of implementing a blockchain in your organization. Or you can partner with other organizations who are developing such group of private consortiums which are there in the market, be it in banking, shipping, container business. Pharma food chains are there, where a lot of pharma or FMCG companies are coming together, building these consortiums so that they can track their products end to end with the unique identities, and they can, a lot of fake products can be avoided. Precious goods, the authenticity of that, because of these chains and uniqueness. A lot of recon processes are removed because it is one to one. There's no middleman in this. It's all controlled by the network where everybody trusts. So that's the kind of ecosystem we are talking about. And I also spoke about, why blockchain, because we are in blockchain version 3 sort of ecosystem. But I just wanted to bring some stats from, one of the recent papers McKinsey has published. And they are talking about why they are actually changing their predictions which they had made in 2016. So this first graph is basically the revenue per employee for traditional kind of finance, because there are a lot of blockchain applications in finance. So for a normal bank and for a decentralized finance app or a company which is offering financial services using blockchain as a technology, what's the difference between the revenue per employee? And you can see the purple color is actually revenue per employee, which means the decentralized finance. Of course, many of you would have read that it's going to be really changing. It's still 1% of the overall finance, but it is still growing substantially. And you can see from the stats, it's grown by 865% in the last 2 years, and it's still growing. And in terms of the total value consumed by this. And on the right hand side, you can see how there are some examples how each decentralized finance apps are actually replacing, are potentially good for replacing some of the traditional finance operations. So um, one second, I can, okay. So, and you can see how Bank of America, some of the services are replaced by lending or asset management or insurance. Most of them are actually going to be disrupted with a DeFi app, which is gaining popularity. Not one, but multiple uh, operations. And similarly, so this is the opportunity. So one, the revenue per employee or the margin in a DeFi, or this is purely only from a finance industry. Same way you go into blockchain application in a real estate or blockchain application in a healthcare, you will see this cost advantage because a lot of middleman, middle office processes are gone. So that means the incentive is there. That means possibility is there to replace old services. I mean, there's a lot of attractive margin because of lack of middle office, back office processes. Naturally the investment will be higher, and the graph is also how the investment in crypto blockchain is going up, and smart with smart contracts eliminating those middlemen. It shows that there's a substantial growth. I mean, close to 30 billion is invested in by investors in the last 2021, if you look at this landscape. So you can see there's a lot of investor interest, there's a lot of potential, and that means the tremendous growth in blockchain over the coming years. So when the market and use cases are growing in this space, naturally you would expect that criminals or attackers would love to tap into this opportunity. Criminals usually, I mean particularly financial criminals, usually go where the customers are going, where the investors are going. And naturally this is an ecosystem which is thriving and likely to thrive in future. So they would certainly love to come here. And one of the stats which has come latest, in this is an elliptic report which has come, it says that 12 billion was lost in DeFi only in 2021, $12 billion. And half of it, almost half of it, was fraud and theft. It can be the fraud and theft of crypto coins, NFT theft, or money laundering, different ways of utilizing this ecosystem for some kind of crime. They call it decrime, but this is a big space where, as risk managers and business experts, we need to be really focused. But the good news is, while decrime is growing, ecosystem is going at a much faster pace. So this is only a share of the business which is going, but we can get ahead of this with technology itself and better risk management control. So, and that is why we need to learn the crime and blockchain risk management. There are three things which makes a technology very, lasting and sustainable. So we see some hype around a technology, but some technologies don't get attraction or investment. But the biggest three reasons, in my opinion, are: one, of course, adoption, possibility of adoption with an affordable range of costing. Second is it is scalable and it is resilient same time. That means you may be successful in a small use case, but when it comes to scalability, it has resilience issue, it has cost issue, technology issue. So in that case, it will not really fly. And the last is this technology also has a risk governance. It means internal governance as well as ecosystem governance by the government or the regulators. So these are the three essential things which we need to make sure that any
Sorry,
technology,
Geet.
be it sorry,
Sorry to
hello,
interrupt you, but yeah,
yeah,
Geeti, just your mic is causing some disturbance. If you could
okay,
increase the volume and
uh-huh,
also keep the mic closer because I think there is some disturbance coming through the system.
I see. Is it better now?
Yeah, this is better.
Hello.
I think when it moves, it creates some noise. So sorry to interrupt.
Okay, sure. Okay, I'll try to reduce the movement. Okay, so these are the three essential things for a technology to be sustainable in the long run, be it blockchain or any other. Uh, so I want you to this was a very high level view or principles for a technology sustainability from a customer, regulator, and stakeholder perspective. And coming to who are those stakeholders when you plan a blockchain a use case. I've just plotted a few stakeholders. There can be more, but just for your awareness, when you decide in an organization that you want to have a blockchain use case, initially starting with your board and senior leadership, you will have the leaders who decide about the strategy, and then the governance. So these are the key people, and you may have a core working group who will be implementing the solution and monitoring and maintaining. So those are the first part or the pillars of the ecosystem. And then you will be having either a own chain or a consortium you will be joining. So the consortium members and your partners will be the second key member in the ecosystem. Third parties who will be associated with this consortium. So this could be the exchange, if you are using any coins, then the exchange and coin providers, or the API providers, the artificial intelligence services or analytics providers. It could be any kind of data which is required, IoT providers, or any kind of data feeds that you will require for running your chain and providing your apps to the customers. Those are the third parties which will be there in the ecosystem. And then your end users, which could be customers, corporate or retail customers. The other external parties are regulators, government, industry players, overall the society and the government, because they will be impacted based on the kind of use case that you are building. So these are the key players in the ecosystem. I'm just showing this ecosystem because when I speak about the different types of risk, you will be able to appreciate it once you know who are the parties involved, for those who are new to the process. So I've just plotted all the different types of risk associated with a blockchain use case or a network. So first is governance risk. I'll explain all of this in detail, but governance risk, strategic risk, and financial crime risk. There is a lot of technology, cyber related risk associated. We'll see that in detail. Third party risk. I spoke about a lot of third parties in the previous slide, and third party risk. Environmental risk, because some of the blockchain consensus, because of their consensus mechanism, they use substantial amount of computing power and energy. So environmental risk is very prominent. We will touch upon that. And the financial risk, which are there are liquidity, market and credit risk associated with some of the blockchain applications. So this is a landscape of broad landscape of different types of risk affecting a blockchain network and the use case. So I hope this slide is visible for you. And I had just put in one slide what are the different risks and what are the things, risk management mitigation techniques that you need to have when you think about a blockchain use case in your organization, when you're planning it or maintaining it, but the broader aspects. So first and foremost, any technology, I need not tell this, but you need to have a very, very deep analysis and suitability analysis before you embark on blockchain, because everybody wants to jump on blockchain, and it is in hype. There's a lot of money available or solutions available. Natural tendency would be a why not try it, but there are many other distributed technologies, which I mean, and storage technologies, which may be simpler from a maintenance perspective. They may be more aligned with your legacy systems that you use. They may be more scalable in future, or less intensive from a cost perspective. So don't jump into a use case and immediately, but plan and have a strategic deliberation. And this deliberation should consider what kind of skills I have, what kind of system, and whether my this blockchain platform or use case will be interoperable with other opportunity, that other systems and other legacy infrastructure that I have. Do I have the right IT team, audit team to do this kind of review and maintenance in a long run perspective? And the longer term is, you may have a lot of scalable thinking, that okay, I prove this use case to be successful, but how do I scale it, and do I have enough resources to scale it? Or do you prefer to completely outsource it, go for a blockchain as a service from an external provider? So these are some of the things that you need to look at from a strategic suitability analysis, and that's the biggest and major. Rest of the things actually you can manage better, but this is that softer strategic risk, which is the first and foremost thing you need to do. As a board, or as a senior leadership, you sometimes you will be asked to advise the board on this, and then you have to think about the strategic suitability. There are many frameworks externally available to do strategic framework risk analysis, where you have to look at the number of intermediaries involved, how big is the process of reconciliation, what kind of pain points are there, is a real cost advantage or is it like a disadvantage. Typically, how do you do a technology strategic analysis? You have to start first with that. And secondly, once you finally, after all this decision, you decide, okay, blockchain solution is for me, I want to go for it. Then the other step is whether you want a private, public, or a hybrid, whether you want as I said, service, software as a service, or you want to build it in house. What kind of, if once you decide which kind of chain and which kind of vendor and provider, you also need to see, or which kind of consortium you want to see. You need to establish, and you have firmed up on the use case, you have firmed up on the platform or use cases. Then what you need to do is ensure that your senior leadership, including your board, has a good risk governance in place to monitor this implementation, understand its risk and success and the failure on a continuous basis, and learn from it and guide the organization from a long term vision. So that's the internal governance, and this is typical technology governance. But other part of governance is, let's say you're building it with a third party or a consortium. There will be a lot of governance internally. That means the governance protocol, the voting rights within the consortium for transactions, taking major decisions, share of your contribution in that consortium, how consortium will govern itself, so that overall, what kind, is it a joint venture, or what kind of is it a DAO, or what kind of organization structure is it going to be. So this has to be very, very clear to you, and sometimes it's very complicated to understand, and these legal jargons and technology jargons. Don't be afraid to ask the simple question. You may sound stupid or silly, but I think some of these questions will have bigger strategic implication when you are faced with a decision and you understand that the voting pattern or the consensus protocol is not in favor of you. It will take years to recover the money for a wrong transaction, or you're not happy, you cannot easily back out. These are sunk decisions, like sunk cost, and the cost for your, when you want to scale this may not be suitable. So the governance, internal governance and external governance, are the two next factors you need to understand and implement once you follow the strategic risk analysis process. So below that, then comes the normal other risk, which are setting the risk appetite aligned with, for this particular use case, how much you are likely to invest and how much loss in case of any loss or any risk that you can lose. So that kind of soft as well as hard risk appetite limits you have to set for this experiment. Typically it starts as an experiment unless it's a very proven consortium or approach that you are adopting. And then as I said, these are the different types of risk. So have the right policies for vetting this new product or new service that you are rolling out. So your operational risk team and your enterprise risk team, the technology team, each of the risk stewards in your organization, legal team, the financial crime team, all of them have to sit together or evaluate what kind of risk are being posed by it. So whether and what kind of business continuity, what kind of financial crime it can pose, what kind of technology controls I need to implement, all this has to be documented, evaluated, and implemented into in a more agile fashion. It shouldn't be that it takes months and months, but in a very agile manner you need to go about it. We'll talk about this risk in little more depth later, but these are the processes and policies you need to put, and also post implementation continuous reviews for the use cases. So once that's there, then you have to ensure that the right skills are there. If it is self operated, even if it's third party operated, you need a lot of oversight in IT related or even audit skill sets for in future. So do you have it, or are you going to rely on external experts for testing it, auditing it, maintaining it, etc.? And sometimes you may be using blockchain with other technologies like AI, IoT, very very common blend these days. One use case having all sort of cloud, AI, IoT. So you need to have experts who have expertise in more than one technology sometimes because of the uniqueness of that use case. So are you having all these skill set is the last question, or I would say it's the first question we considered in the strategic analysis, but ensuring that these skill sets are deployed to constantly identify, measure, measure, assess, and report, and even mitigate these kind of risks. So this slide basically gives you a full landscape of uh, blockchain risk management framework. Uh, this can be applied to any technology risk management framework, but I've just put from a blockchain perspective. In addition to the organizational experts, there are external parties in this framework, which are your competitors, consortium partners, your developers who are providing these services and developing the solution if it is outside, auditors and security experts, because this technology platform and smart contracts need to be continuously audited and reviewed. So they play a big part in your risk management system, and oracles who provide the data and the feeds through APIs or other mechanisms are also key in your ecosystem for risk management. So they feed in, and you engage in a continuous dialogue and exchange with them is also very important to have a robust blockchain risk management business model. Uh, I had already covered this in the previous one. Where should you use blockchain? So this is part of the strategic use case analysis. So where there's a lot of middlemen, high intermediary fees, lot of multiple parties. I mean, across the world or across the state, data privacy is very important. There is less trust. Somebody may alter the record. So there are such unique cases where you may use and high reconciliation required, like in an international trade use case or a healthcare record maintenance, educational record maintenance, or digital assets. These are some of the cases where you need authenticity as a first, or immutability as the first privilege. That's where we will use it. Now, I will go back to this slide and start talking about touching about some more risk in detail, like what are the risks I'm talking about. The first and foremost, many of the blockchain experts will talk about technology and cyber risk. Now, there are many aspects to it, but I'll talk about one or two key areas we need to watch out, and you can read further on this. So blockchain, everybody, when the name comes, everybody thinks it's ultimately secure, right? Immutable, transparent, decentralized. But is it really immune to technology and cyber risk? My answer and everybody's answer would be no. There are still cyber risk and technology risk. So the most common blockchain cyber risk, and many of you would have read in the newspaper also, is cyber security risk. To give you some statistics, it says that from year 2012, at least 2.66 billion was stolen from crypto exchanges, and at least 46 Bitcoin exchanges have suffered a data breach. And how does it happen? Because when you have coins, you will use it in your digital wallet or physical wallets, which are like cold wallets. Uh, the hackers are able to access this digital wallet and take out the money, I mean the currency, or your NFTs which you have bought, and then leave with it. So in such cases, you are actually, you don't know, they have just left, and to recover it, I mean, you may be getting a trail because of the immutability character, but to undo the transaction, recover it, it's a big challenge. And sometimes it may be challenging even from a court of law to get it back, because even the crypto laws, the digital asset regulations, etc., may not be as strong in many of the jurisdictions. They are developing. Some jurisdictions are very advanced, like US, Singapore, some of the Southeast Asian nations. They all have now digital laws, laws for digital assets, cybersecurity laws enhanced to think about digital assets and digital assets providers, virtual asset providers. But this is one biggest struggle and biggest area of fraud that people are talking about and people are worried about. What are the risk mechanisms that you can do? So one major vulnerability is key hacking. The second vulnerability is smart contract vulnerabilities being exploited. Now, in blockchain, most of the applications on blockchain are made with the support of smart contract. What is smart contract? Compared to an original physical or a digital contract, smart contracts are like codes which self-operate and execute a transaction. So if blockchain is applied for a purpose, let's say lending or sending money, or let's say transacting on a document, you can code it in a way that transact with party A and B, and then once it is executed, transfer the money or do X activity, whatever is the activity for a purpose which you are developing the application. It can be lending, payment, or an NFT sale or whatever. But smart contract and coded or digital contracts help to execute it in the backdrop. Now these contracts there are different languages in which they are developed, but historically there have been a lot of code vulnerabilities, and traditional vulnerability tools or the dictionaries don't have all the kind of vulnerabilities associated with the blockchain smart contract listed in them. I mean, these dictionaries are developing, tools are developing and incorporating these vulnerabilities in the scanning process or vulnerability testing process. So that's a developing field. But because these smart contracts carried this inherent vulnerability of code copy paste, code incorrect, or developer limitations, etc., a lot of money has been siphoned away, because they would alter the contract or use a particular weakness in a small contract code and siphon away the money. And the end users or exchanges, and one fine day they discover that money is gone, or there are duplicate transactions, or you know and then the funds are completely lost. So these are two major vulnerabilities in the blockchain. There are other technology scalability issue, resilience issues, etc., but I would call these are the two major areas. Now, how these are two major risk management systems. So for key wallet and theft, basically basic individual cyber hygiene and cyber hygiene by the exchanges would be the biggest solution. um, what we need to do is like we have lots of password, uh, what do you call, password protection norms. So don't store your or transfer your wallet keys in an unsecured exchanges, or don't keep it open on your computers just like that, because the vulnerability is not coming from blockchain, but the vulnerability is coming from the system that you use to access your wallet. And if any phishing attempt is done, then your keys are gone, and your wallet or whatever assets, digital assets you possess, are gone, and that's the root cause. So basic antivirus, firewall control, basic cyber hygiene around password sharing, digital password or digital wallet keys, etc., are the basic control. And for smart contract, there are advanced tools today to check before deployment whether any vulnerability exists. But that tools may not be the ultimate, because vulnerabilities can be something unique in the next time when based on your process. So continuous scanning, auditing of this smart contract are the key areas where you can do cybersecurity. The other risk I wanted to talk about today is the financial crime risk. This is one major area where most countries are looking at, even FATF is looking at, because cryptocurrencies, because of the anonymity and attached to it, a lot of cyber criminals and financial criminals are utilizing it. And when the environmental the regulations around it, or countries are tightening the monitoring, they go and utilize unregulated exchanges, crypto, in countries where regulations are less, and utilize it. So what I recollect is DOJ, USA, Department of Justice, actually suspended close to 280 crypto exchanges providers, because of the kind of massive money laundering that they did. There are so many such exchanges who are actually fraudulently dealing with, uh, wrongfully, laundering these cryptos for and money from illegal means converted into cryptos, and then eventually coming as white. So financial crime is a very big area where regulations are coming. Some have beefed up, but this is a big area which is likely to come. So the overall regulation in this space you must understand that many jurisdictions won't have it, which means if your third party provider or your user or a consortium member goes into a dispute, you may not have adequate legal or regulatory backup. And sometimes, because of the immutability nature and consensus protocol, to even for genuine mistake where you wrongfully transfer a fund, to get it back, you may have to go through the entire consensus program and majority of the voting rights to get it back, which is an enforceability nightmare. And hence I would say, the watch out and understand your legal and regulatory landscape in the jurisdiction where you're implementing the solution, as well as where the users are residing, so that the dispute jurisdiction, the applicable laws are known to the consumer as well as to the business. Coming back, so legal and compliance risk I have covered. And next, I wanted to talk about third party and environmental a little bit more before we go towards metaverse. So, third party, in this case, there will be a lot of API providers, because blockchain may need information feed. So, it can be through oracles giving, let's say, a temperature or a political data, or identity data from another external source, or continuously news or any other information which requires your application, or prices, market prices, for example, or commodity prices, any other information that your blockchain will need to run your smart contract or application, will be considered as third parties in this ecosystem. Now, third party risk, irrespective of blockchain or any sort of digital third party or technology third party, poses a lot of vulnerability, either by themselves or the next third party that they take the services. So that's one space you need to do thorough due diligence. What are the third parties am I going to use, and who are their end party, and ensure there's a correct due diligence, and their survival, because these are, many of them are startups, so their financial resilience also should be evaluated in this case. Lastly, environmental risk. As I mentioned, there are different types of protocols that blockchain use cases use. One is proof of work, the other is proof of stake. There are other newer protocols like proof of elapsed time. There are other complex protocols also, uh, within which proof of work is the most energy intensive. And Bitcoin is actually running on proof of work, where mining happens, and mining is a most intensive process where a lot of energy is required, computing power is required, and because of that, blockchain networks and Bitcoin is under criticism by globally, especially the environmental activists are saying that if you look at the consumption of Ethereum, otherwise it is like one transaction could be equivalent to energy consumption of one household for a week. So that's the kind of energy consumption we are talking about. So they view environmental risk activism, ESG focus is increasing. So there's a lot of interest, and even blockchain providers or miners have become more sensitive to this. So even Ethereum is thinking about changing its protocol and becoming less energy intensive and more flexible in their protocol in 2022. But the larger issue is, how can you offset your energy impact using offsetting mechanisms, either using renewable energy for your mining process. So there are blockchain climate accords globally. Even IBM, a lot of other consortiums are actually leading the way to create awareness among miners and the users, plus give them an option to offset using other carbon offsetting mechanisms, like buying carbon credit or using renewable energy, so that the net impact, and they can be net neutral by 2040. 2040 is a long way, but these efforts are there at this moment. So that's how they are trying to mitigate. Overall, I think business continuity again, in this case, lastly, I would touch. Um, in blockchain services, particularly in the organization, you need to make sure that, first of all, this particular service which is on blockchain, you have factored in resilience, and you do your DR testing, and you are comfortable then, and you have an alternative if the service goes down. Typical BC's challenges, but because your people, the skills may be new, you may be, the provider itself may be new to your ecosystem. So please do plan and build in this kind of new technology resilience requirement and the downtime planning when you do this your overall use case. So that's the key area. And in from a resilience angle, I would try to highlight. Lastly, there are some financial risk, but this is more applicable in terms of coins, while majority of the cryptos, currencies, NFTs, etc., not for other simple use case like a process application. In financial risk are, I mean, many of you know the prices of Bitcoin or any other coin for that matter, whether there's uncertainty whether there some of the stable coins are indeed backed by the underlying currency, or some of the people who just come with an initial currency offering and then just vanish. So there's a lot of fraud risk coming from there because of lack of unreliable third parties offering these services. So there's a liquidity risk because when you want to exit, you don't have a provider or you don't have a market, you don't have the price which you entered, and it can really overnight wipe a lot of wealth. So those are some of the financial risk I would highlight. And when you do invest in such kind, do your due diligence just like the way you will do a what do you call a stock due diligence, and similarly study as much as possible, make yourself aware of the potential options and risk rather than just move along the hype and go and invest in one currency which is doing well. There's so many currencies out there and many of them vanish after some time. So these are the broad areas I wanted to touch, and maybe I'll just stop with a little bit more on metaverse risk, and Rajesh would be briefing a lot more on metaverse later. Um, so basically, some of you at least must have visited metaverse using your headset. This is my birthday picture taken this Sunday, where I had a fun metaverse birthday. I think I had shared with her also. But this market opportunity is tremendous. It is expected to grow over the next 20 30, at least by 40, close to 40%, and it's a huge revenue opportunity. And most of the services are expected to be media entertainment, where you have virtual events in metaverse, education, banking, healthcare, where all you are doing this virtually using metaverse and the headset, or non-headset based on metaverse services. So these are some of the industries which are likely to use. Again, in these industries, some of the key things that what I've been doing over the last few months is actually going and visiting metaverse and experiencing different platforms. And what I noticed, there's no consistent control mechanisms, and security controls are getting enhanced based on user experience and continuous feedback. So in case your organization is planning to have a virtual location in metaverse, or you are going to expose your customers to those areas, or as an individual you are going to use these services, some of the risk, the key top ones are, of course, conduct risk from an organization, particularly for banking and financial institution. How you conduct business, if you're offering a service, an advisory, be it market advisory or an investment advisory. Conduct risk of the people who are interacting. There's no monitoring mechanism in metaverse what kind of offers are being done. So make sure that you have those controls, recordings, the capability to record the voice or the audio, and save it for long-term retrieval, then and conduct rules designed for your employees to transact in metaverse. That's the number one thing. Some platforms do have disclaimers and what do you call attestation on the platform, but not all everybody, and that is the provider support. But from your regulatory angle, you are providing these services, you are supposed to demonstrate to the regulator that I have the right conduct risk management protocols in place. So that would be the first number one, more than technology, I would highlight. Second is third party risk, like these are provided by very nascent third party. Very few are making money. That means financial survival is very, very low unless they are making huge money and hugely adopted. So make sure that you partner with a robust one where you are very clear that they are going to survive and they're well funded, they have the right control and the right culture alignment with your organization risk appetite. The other thing, as I said, cyber risk, because NFTs are widely used for virtual events and virtual transactions. Cryptos will be used to buy services in the digital assets. So all those cyber risks which I just mentioned are associated with metaverse also. And some of the cyber attacks, and you may be spoofed into a different website or a different room altogether compared to a popular room, and you will be going thinking that that's a real room, whereas it may be just a fake room, just like a fake website issue. So those are some of the cyber risk associated I can just foresee. And of course, and largely, lastly, I would say resilience of the platform itself is a very big aspect which we need to be mindful. I would just leave with this parting note. I just have a story to share. This is the story. This is a Greek story of innovative wings of Icarus. So Icarus was actually imprisoned with his father in a Greek island, and they wanted badly to escape. So Icarus' father was a big, I mean, very famous craftsman. So he created a wings made of wax for him to escape. So the son was very excited. I now have this nice wax wings. I want to fly. And then he said, okay. Then the father said, son, you can fly, but don't fly too close to the sun or too close to the sea. He was escaping from an island. And Icarus, because of his enthusiasm, what he did is he actually flew very close to the sun in that happy moment. And what happened is his wings melted and he fell down and drowned and died. And that's exactly I wanted to talk about when we talk about NFTs or digital assets or cryptos. There's so much hype out there. There's so metaverse also. There's so much hype out of there. And as professionals, what we can do is we need to study, improve our skills over that, and create awareness among our peers and our friends, so that collectively we can protect our organization, ourselves, and our families and our friends. So that's where I hope you will be able to build that base from the system and this particular session. And I hope I'm now opening up for questions, if any. uh, Harsh,
Yeah.
do we have time for question, or should we go to the next session?
Uh,
How is it?
yeah. Sorry to interrupt, Geeti. Actually, we don't have much time for questions,
Okay,
so we can end your session. So thank you so
sure.
much for such an insightful session, and looking
Yeah.
forward for many more such sessions from your side.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can I
Thank you so
stay
much.
muted? I can listen to Rajesh, right?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Yeah.
You can
Sure.
just
Sure.
put off
Thank
your
you.
camera.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Uh, Hi, Rajesh.
Hey Nidhi, are you able to hear me okay?
Yeah, I am able to hear you, but if you could please switch on your camera also.
I have a bandwidth issue, so I tried doing that, and when I switch on the
Okay.
video, the voice goes for a toss. Any which case, I don't have a
Okay.
pretty face to show, so people don't
Okay.
miss in.
Okay, okay, no worries, no worries. So let me just give you a short introduction of Mr. Rajesh. Mr. Rajesh leads the blockchain and cybersecurity practice for USD 5.2 billion IT giant, that is Tech Mahindra. He was instrumental in establishing blockchain for over several global customers at Tech Mahindra. He is also a member of blockchain steering committee at IIM Ahmedabad, part of World Economic Forum. So without wasting much time, over to you, Mr. Rajesh. And, we are overwhelmed to have you on board and looking forward for an interesting and insightful session.
Thank you, Nidhi. Thanks for the kind introduction. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you on this digital medium today. Nidhi, can you confirm if you're able to see the screen or?
Yes, your screen is visible.
My screen is visible. Okay, so let's jump into the exciting world of non-fungible tokens. And thanks, Geeti, for setting a lot of context. So basically, in the olden days, it was very easy to capture, I mean, to copy and download a digital file. It could be a digital picture, it could be a video file, or it could be a screen grab of something which is valuable. But today, it is nearly impossible to do that and claim ownership of an asset on the internet. Basically, you cannot, no more you can go and just copy, let's say, valuable picture that belongs to somebody else and say that that picture belongs to you. And that differentiation is happening because of what we call as the non-fungible tokens. So what are non-fungible tokens? Unlike cryptocurrencies, these cannot be exchanged for something. They can, you can buy them by using money, or you can buy them using crypto. But in crypto, once you have received the crypto, you can use that crypto to spend for future transactions, because there is a stored value that a crypto has. Whereas a non-fungible token cannot be used to uh, execute what we call as the commercial transactions. That's why, since it cannot be exchanged for something of value, that is why it is called as a non-fungible token. From that perspective, it is unique. Unlike crypto, it cannot be divided into multiple pieces. For example, if you take Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency can be divided into 100 million pieces, and the smallest piece is called as Satoshi, in the honor of in the honor of the person who is supposed to have invented Bitcoin. Unlike that, cryptocurrency non-fungible token is indivisible. Obviously, non-fungible tokens bring in an interoperability aspect. Today, you can buy the non-fungible token on one particular platform or in one particular marketplace, and you can sell it in another marketplace. It's not necessary that they have to be bought and sold only on a particular marketplace. That is what it brings in interoperability. And in the exciting world of Metaverse, NFTs are also being used to buy entry tickets to the concerts and various other things. So it can be used to buy only a specific kind of a service. In sense, you can call it as a, in a crude format, you can call it as a barter system. And that's where, because of those components, it has interoperability. And then obviously their digital assets, they are valuable digital assets, usually limited in supply. That's why the value is being created. That's why it brings in the element of scarcity. And we know that NFTs have become very popular. They've become mainstream. A lot of people started taking a serious note of NFTs when a digital artist called Beeple, he sold the art. Basically, this guy used to publish digital art every day, and he collated the digital arts in the first 5,000 days that he had published, and then made a collage, and it was sold at a Christie's auction at $69 million. In India itself, we have a lot of celebrities getting onto the NFT bandwagon. You would have seen Salman Khan advertising a particular platform called Chingari with Gari tokens. We had Amitabh Bachchan getting onto the NFT bandwagon. A lot of cricketing stars are getting onto the NFT bandwagon. Likewise, there have been many such iconic sales of NFTs. And as per NASDAQ, the global market is expected to increase by 1,000 times over. And we expect that this industry will move from $330 million to about $370 billion in a span of about, in the next 8 years. That's a staggering growth of 100% CAGR. So what are the drivers for rapid growth of NFTs? One is in terms of ease of technology. There you have a lot of wallets that are available where you could buy NFTs and hold NFTs. You have wallets like MetaMask and the others. There are many marketplaces that have sprung up. There is Rarible, there is OpenSea, Super Rare, and various kind of marketplaces which made the liquidity in the NFTs mainstream. Basically, you buy an NFT and there is a market that is readily available, and you can sell that particular NFT, which is what brings in the aspect of monetization. And it is also ushering us into an era what we call as the creators economy, which is very much tied with what the analysts call as the gig economy. So basically, no more the category of consumers and the category of producers are different. Today we are in a world what is called as prosumer. A consumer can be a producer can be a consumer, and they are able to monetize their work very easily. Because of that, it has caught on the attention of many people. And obviously the ecosystem surrounding NFT, by virtue of participation of various protocol companies, various enterprises and various startups, has made the adoption easy and super early. So what are the use cases? We're seeing NFT entrenchment in gaming. We are seeing NFTs in metaverse, in fantasy, sports, music, artwork, healthcare, and medical records, and many other areas, from a digital identity perspective, decentralized finance. Now people are also talking about fractional ownership of NFT. For example, you have an NFT which is worth probably $100,000. A single person may not be able to buy that, but a group of people can come together, invest in that NFT from a fractional ownership perspective, and then possibly hold on to the NFT and later sell it at a premium, or sell it at for a higher price, thereby creating the much required valuation. So these are the areas where we're seeing good penetration of NFT. Several leading brands have imbibed NFTs. Some of the brands are looking at NFT as a conduit to metaverse. For example, Visa bought a CryptoPunk NFT at about 50 ether. It translates to over $150,000, just to make a statement that Visa is not an old age payments company. They're digitally savvy, and they have a lot of relevance in the NFT world and in the metaverse world. Likewise, the brands that you see on the screen, many of them have used NFTs, have started offering NFTs. For example, National Basketball Association has a marketplace for NFT called Top Shots, and where NFTs get traded. They're able to rake up close to about $500 million of sale per annum in using NFTs. So NFT is obviously leading us into the metaverse. Basically, put simply, metaverse, it's a digital rendition of the world, or a digital representation of the world, which consists of people, their respective avatars, and the people and the avatars are able to interact with each other, either using specific hardware devices, or not using any specific hardware device other than a mobile and a laptop. So basically, the ones that involve utilization of devices, it is called as the virtual reality. For example, on the left-hand side of the slide, you will see the person using devices. And then by virtue of those devices, the person is able to extend his hand into the virtual world, and the hand is able to grab a particular thing. On the other hand, augmented reality is a rendition of the environment in a three-dimensional fashion. It does not require usage of any devices like HoloLens or anything, or ocular lens or whatever it is. It is not required, and it is rendered on on a smartphone, or on a tablet, or on a computer. It is called as a web first and a mobile first metaverse world. So in the past, the metaverse also has three different layers. Let me clarify that to you. The front end layer is the presentation layer, which usually is a combination of virtual reality, augmented reality, extended reality, mixed reality. It is a permutation and a combination of these components. That by itself is not metaverse, because those form factors were in existence for several years, right? It's been almost like 10 to 15 years. They by alone do not constitute metaverse. So what is constituting to the metaverse? Obviously the presentation layer, which I mentioned to you. Then the middle layer, which is bringing in the element of monetization. This monetization was absent previously. For example, you would have recalled playing interactive games, but they did not allow you to take the game out. In those games, they did not allow you to take out the assets out of the game and put it on a marketplace. Yeah, Farmville, Cityville, you would have created some farms, you would have created some cities, and the monetization of that was confined only to Facebook or Zynga, the people who created those games. But they did not give you an opportunity to take those in-game assets or the virtual assets and put it up on a third-party marketplace for monetization. Today, that is possible because of the underlying blockchain technology and non-fungible tokens. Remember, I told you earlier it was difficult to differentiate original digital asset from a copied digital asset or a plagiarized digital asset. Because of NFT and the underlying unique token that is backing up those digital assets, you're able to now tell a fake one from a real one. Because of this ability, the monetization capabilities have opened up significantly in the virtual world or in the augmented reality world or an extended reality world. And that is what is ushering an environment of metaverse. Now comes at the back end where you need the bandwidth, where you need the connectivity, and then you also need pretty good compute at the device end. Those things today are being supported by 4G. Tomorrow, when 5G becomes mainstream, 5G will play an important role over there. And that optimization of 5G with the metaverse is going to usher in completely a new world of meta commerce. And we know in terms of, if you look at the evolution of commerce, we had the physical commerce, which went on to a phone commerce. From phone, it went to an web commerce. From web, it went to an app commerce. And every time when we had these new form factors of commerce coming in, the market, has increased several hundred times. So with the combination of 5G and the combination of metaverse, which is going to unleash what we call as meta commerce, it is going to trigger in a completely new set of industry and also a huge amount of opportunities. So what is it going to lead to? One, obviously, it is going to lead to immersive experiences. For example, HSBC has recently opened a branch in Metaverse on Decentraland. So you could go to that particular branch. You can perform any of the banking transaction you in that branch which is there in the Metaverse. Those banking transactions will not be different compared to the banking transactions that you will do on a web or on a phone or in person. That is the immersive experience that brands are looking at. In addition to those immersive experiences, people are also looking at reimagining some of the things today which are not possible, especially from a remote collaboration perspective. For example, NVIDIA and BMW have announced a creation of an entire BMW shop floor in Metaverse. It is a completely, they have recreated the shop floor. You can also say that it's a digital twin for research and development for the car models. Earlier, when you had to do R&D on car models on a shop floor, you had to bring everybody in a physical plane on that particular shop floor because you had to experiment on the fly on the shop floor. Today, it's not required. You can have those engineers sitting anywhere in the world, and using extended reality and virtual reality, they could contribute to on the fly changes on the shop floor, even though they are not physically present. And obviously, a lot of things are happening in the healthcare world with respect to metaverse, whether it is robotic surgeries, pushing the frontiers of those robotic surgeries, or in research and development from a gene sequencing perspective. So metaverse, again, in terms of for the value of metaverse to be maxified or maximized, one needs to have three things in place. One is content, the second one is creativity, and the third one is commerce. Content has been existing for quite some time, and then creativity has also been around. But the commerce is the new piece which has kind of come in because of the factors that I mentioned to you before, from the development of non-fungible tokens, from the development of cryptocurrency as a payment rail for digital assets, especially for digital assets, whether they are super premium or they cost only a fraction of a dollar or a fraction of prevailing currency. The cryptocurrencies are able to facilitate that. Because of these three things coming together, um, we are looking at metaverse from a different perspective. I had explained to you many use cases of metaverse. Immersive gaming, of course, it's a no-brainer. That's where it started. Then it got extended into fan engagement, 3D concerts, meta-commerce. I mentioned to you virtual bank. Not only HSBC, JPMC has also started their branch in metaverse. There's a South Korean bank called Uri Bank, which has created not only a branch but complete financial district on metaverse. Then obviously virtual tourism is another important use case from metaverse perspective. So what are the hurdles in NFT and metaverse? Non-fungible token today, the regulation has not matured enough. For example, you buy, let's say, a digital asset which is of super premium, possibly $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, and if you want to safeguard that from a copyright perspective and from a plagiarism perspective, you still are required to go to an offline court and then get it registered as one would do with respect to their IPR. So those things have still not evolved from a digital ownership perspective. Today, there is no service that is available on the internet which is doing a proactive screening of all NFTs and identifying the fake NFTs from the original NFTs. Something like a bureau where people can subscribe to the bureau, and that bureau will help you to safeguard your digital assets. Not only safeguard, but also identify people who are trying to create copies of your digital assets. Then obviously the understanding of the regulation, understanding of the policy makers, the lawmakers is not very clear from an NFT perspective. It is going to evolve over a period of time. Metaverse, the code of practice is still not evolved. There are social values as well as ethical values that are applicable in metaverse. There have been instances where a lady went into a metaverse and then the person's avatar was molested the moment the person went into metaverse. So some of these things are disturbing in nature because the code of practice is yet to evolve, and people will learn the do's and don'ts over a period of time. So one needs to be careful about bullying, stalking, uncivil behavior, which is going to evolve by a code of practice and also evolve by the surrounding social values, which will further get reiterated with the ethical values. Then obviously from a metaverse perspective, the identity establishment of identity is becomes key. A lot of people may want to use metaverse from a perspective of anonymity. They don't want to reveal their real identity. So how do you establish that in fact they are the people who they claim to be? That's another area one needs to look into. Then many of the currency and the payment systems that are there in metaverse are architected on cryptocurrency, and cryptocurrency is not considered as a legal tender in many countries, and the regulation around cryptocurrencies is still not clear, including India. Then obviously the law and jurisdiction, for example, the digital assets that you buy in metaverse, what is the validity of those digital assets? Then the valuation practices, apart from just a circular economy. Circular economy is purely based on demand and supply, but without having components like underlying use cases, underlying valuation metrics which are driving valuation. So these are some of the hurdles. I wouldn't say that they are unsurmountable. With the advent of time and more people internalizing metaverse and NFT, some of these challenges can be addressed. And obviously, Geeti had mentioned about cybersecurity. People have to be very careful. The same cybersecurity good practices that are applicable in the digital world will also be applicable in metaverse from a perspective of maintaining a good password hygiene. Then the companies also have to look at their metaverse environments from a vulnerability and a penetration testing perspective. They need to enhance the security posture on those metaverse environments and harden the infrastructure that maintains the security of those metaverse. Then obviously many of these things are going to be rendered out of the cloud environments, and organizations have to up their learning curve when it comes to cloud rendered services. Today they're very restricted in nature, but when metaverse comes into play, they become mainstream and they become all pervasive. So from that perspective, organizations also have to strengthen their cloud security practices. So this gives you an example of the NFT marketplace that we created. It's called as Middle Mist. It's a marketplace for digital artists, enabling them to sell their art. The sale of art in the physical channels has been severely restricted on the account of the ongoing pandemic, as a result of which we created a digital medium for these artists to curate their digital art and sell without the fear of those art either being stolen or being copied. Then obviously, I don't want to cover this slide. In terms of, these are some of the service offerings that are available today, no different from the service offerings that are offered by the other service providers. With that, I bring my session to an end and turn it back to Nidhi. Any questions, I'm happy to answer. Back to you, Nidhi.
Yes, Rajesh. I don't think so. There are any questions. Let me
Sure.
check.
Okay, if there are no questions, then we
The
can bring
recording
it.
will be available. This is for a few people who've asked. The recording of the session will be available. Rajesh, we have one question from Puneet. What is the role of metaverse in healthcare?
Okay. The role of metaverse in a healthcare, there are multiple things. There are a lot of, for example, from a remote patient monitoring perspective, remote patient, help perspective, and also some of the patients who are there, the critically ill patients. Some of the equipment that they use is quite complex. In terms of, there may be one or two people who are aware of the modus operandi of those equipments. So from a metaverse environment perspective, when you make all those simplified from a metafied environment, which makes a lot more immersive. A good example is if I give you a physical manual and then ask you to imbibe whatever there is there in the physical manual, some people will still be able to do that, a user guide or a user manual. But on the other hand, you give a digital user guide, it becomes a lot more involved. Basically, the guides, the nurses, or the doctors around, it makes things a lot more easier. So metaverse is primarily being looked at from a reimagining the telehealth, reimagining delivering medical care and medical facilities to remote locations, and also providing the much required oversight for critically ill patients.
Uh, Geeti, do you want to take this question? What would be the role of insurers in Metaverse? Geeti, do you want to answer this?
Yeah, so like Rajesh mentioned, in all industries, wherever there is a customer interaction uh, through metaverse, for example, insurance advisory, you will feel that you're going to an insurance branch and you are availing a service from them. So you have an immersive agent communication, or you can have your policies can be issued using blockchains as a unique policy, and authentication is possible any point of time, the originality. So from an insurance angle, I think majority is consultation, and I would say from a medical, the earlier question, even patient, the training of doctors and nurses also is much more easier, because you can have those models much more immersive, the human body and other or scans, etc., you can have in a much more immersive way rather than a two-dimensional in a traditional training. So metaverse can be a solution in there too.
Absolutely. And also, I just recalled one good example that I heard recently. Many medical students are not able to study the anatomy because the availability of cadavers, that is the dead body for medical purposes, has gone down. Earlier, people used to make those cadavers available easily, but now nobody wants to use the cadavers, or rather, people want the body to be used for organ donation rather than for training purposes of the medical students. That entire anatomy component has now been created in AR, VR perspective, with doctors also participating remotely. So, mini metaverse from a medical anatomy for a lot of medical students has been created, which makes the assimilation of medical science a lot more easy and accessible.
We'll just take one or two more last questions. How do you see Metaverse used for humanitarian assistance, and particularly for cash transfer to the poor as part of the cash assistance scheme?
Cash transfer to the poor from a metaverse perspective, I would think, I'm not too sure from a metaverse perspective, but definitely the central bank digital currency, which is being created by the governments, that can play an important role, more from a blockchain perspective. Because even in India today, in spite of having mushrooming of banks, non-banking financial institutions, the percentage of underbanked people is very high. The commercial banks obviously do not want to extend banking facilities to them. So what happens is, when the digital rupee that the Honorable Finance Minister has spoken about in her budget presentation, when it becomes a reality from RBI perspective, then RBI can conceptualialize that digital rupee in such a way that it can be set up as a retail CBDC, which means RBI can facilitate those underbanked people to open up their accounts directly with RBI, and the money transfer can happen directly from RBI to those particular accounts without having any intermediaries in place. Today, it is not possible because banks serve as an intermediary between the central bank and the end user. And those banks, the commercial obligations play an important role and act as a deterrent to fulfill the social obligations. With the CBDC, the digital rupee coming into the place, some of those components can be addressed easily, and what you are referring to can be catered to.
Yeah, and if I may add one point there, so metaverse has lot of educational applications where you get a much better educational feel of things moving around you, be it planets or any of the things that you see on textbook, much more augmented and immersive. So children can study. They may not get that otherwise from even in any background, whether financially. I'm just not ignoring the financial background, but any sort of things which they are learning from textbook or a 2D website perspective, they can have and touch and feel and maybe walk around it when they are studying. So there are a lot of good use cases where, like healthcare we already explained, education is one. And for artists, when for example artists who don't have too much of money and too much of PR possibilities, they can also start metaverse events. I'm sure the costing will gradually improve for them. So a lot of middlemen, lot of services will be available metaverse for events as a service, and they can do immersive events which are much more profitable for them and can be scalable. It can be done across the world in one shot rather than just a physical event. So definitely metaverse will create more educational opportunities, more what do you call, livelihoods for people, and make them more, I mean, it's a decentralized, it's owned by them. So it is more an empowering platform if put to the right use and if it is in the right hands.
Okay, and just to conclude, maybe the last question from Vaibhav. How real and believable is holographic presence in Metaverse to give it a feel of real and in-person interaction?
Yeah, in terms of it's all subjective, right? At least what I know is from a Microsoft perspective, they're trying to make Teams a lot more immersive and interactive. At least I'd been to one Microsoft meeting where they had integrated Metaverse into the Microsoft Teams, which is basically a pretty good substitute to go to webinar. And they had brought all the people or created a feeling that that all the people are in the same room. Somebody came in the form of the avatar of a bird. Somebody came as an avatar of leaf, primarily uh, to, uh, uh, to let them represent themselves or from their outlook or a free spirit perspective. And obviously having been through that session wherein they were able to, for example, in the physical world, you can write on a whiteboard and somebody who is sitting there looks at that and then says that walks up to the board and says, here are two more points from an from an interactive or interpreting perspective. In a digital medium, it becomes a little difficult, but some of those hurdles they're able to overcome by integrating metaverse into it. What was the outcome? It was a mixed reaction. Some people felt that it's unnecessary intrusion, representing people in the form of a bird, in the form of a leaf. Didn't go down well with someone, but somebody thought it's a brilliant expression of themselves. So always the reaction is mixed, and obviously the focus is more on productivity rather than the frills aspect. If it is able to bring in a lot of productivity and minimize the frills, the adoption will be higher.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rajesh. Thanks, Geeti. And once again, thanks to the entire audience for tuning in today. And we look forward to engaging and working with all of you. And do let us know if there are any topics of interest. We'll be happy to cover that in our future masterclasses and webinars. We'll be closing the session now, so you may kindly log out. Thank you.
Okay, guys, thanks all.
Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
Thank you. Bye bye.